Alright, so the Chapter 4A test, taken a long time ago, February 22nd, 2019. This is the calculator version. It was out of 14 points. Question number 1, multiple choice. Use a calculator to find the approximate value of the expression rounded to 2 decimal places, cosecant of 31 degrees. So if you have your calculator, you realize that in your graphing calculator that there's only 3 trig functions on there. There's only sine, cosine, and tangent. That means you're going to have to use a reciprocal identity, and the reciprocal identity you're going to use is cosecant of theta equals 1 over sine of theta. Sine is on your calculator, so if they give me 31 degrees is my angle, then I can just put that there. So I have 1 over sine of 31 degrees. You can do this in a couple of ways. I decided to evaluate sine at 31 first. I'm going to check this calculator, make sure it's on degree mode, because I have a degrees there, and I can type in sine of 31, and that gives me the 0.5150, and then you can just divide those two numbers, and you get the answer of approximately 1.9417. Although it tells me to round to 2 decimal places, notice here that I didn't round to 2. So if I really wanted to be tricky, I could have made the numbers really close, like the next problem. Okay. Also, you could have tried to type in just 1 divided by the sine of 31, and you get the same answer. So multiple choice, that was worth 2 points. Question number, let's go down to question number 2, a free response question. Solve for x, round to the nearest tenth. I have a right triangle. I have sides 10, x, and 20 degrees. From 20 degrees, I circled it because that's my starting point. I always want to label my triangle, so across the right angle is the hypotenuse. Going across from the angle is the opposite side. And then the last one is the adjacent. So I have numbers written at 10 here. So that's the opposite side. The adjacent is x. I don't need the hypotenuse, that's why I crossed it off. And in SOHCAHTOA, I can cross off anything that has the hypotenuse. So therefore, I'm going to be using tangent. Tangent of 20 degrees equals the opposite over the adjacent. The trig function, which is always right next to the angle, is equal to the ratio of its sides. Because I'm solving for a side and not an angle, I will never use the inverse in this problem. I have tangent of 20 equals 10 over x. To solve for x, I'm going to have to cross multiply, put tangent of 20 over 1. So I have x times tangent of 20 equals 10. To solve for x, I'm going to divide both sides by tangent of 20. Here's my calculator-ready equation, 10 over tan 20. If you put that into your calculator, you get approximately 27.5. I gave you 2 points if you identified that you were using tangent, and maybe the rest of it's wrong. You got 3 points if you had a CRE, calculator-ready equation, 10 over tangent of 20. You got 3 points if you made a rounding mistake. So the student, for some reason, if it says round to the nearest tenth, always use lots of decimals. So there is a difference between these two, and I think it changes your rounding. The reason why I probably wrote that is probably a couple of students were struggling with this right here. And then if you didn't have a calculator-ready equation but an answer or sufficient work, I gave you guys a 3 out of 4. Question number 3, multiple choice, convert the angle to decimal degrees and round to the nearest hundredth of a degree. Hundredth is 2 decimal places. There was a typo there. It should have said 310 degrees, 20 minutes. That's 1 apostrophe, and then 47 seconds. And I graded this problem by hand, even though it was multiple choice, because actually the correct answer is not even there. It wasn't a trick question. I take questions from other quizzes and tests from other teachers as well. So I have 310 plus 20 over 60, and this one is 47 over 3,600. The reason why is that there's 1/60th of a second in a minute. So basically what you're doing here is you're converting it into minutes, and then you're converting it into degrees. And that's the reason why it's out of 3,600. Now, again, a couple of students who missed the problem, so the correct answer is, the closest one would have been B, but I'll show you guys how I graded it. A lot of students actually stopped here. They would have done something like this. 0.33 plus 0.01. That would have been sufficient, but I've seen students who didn't write enough decimal places. So again, I know it says round to the nearest hundredth. Don't do that here in your work. Do that in the final answer. If you add those together, I get 310.3464 degrees. And then if you round to the nearest hundredth, which is the second decimal place, you have to look there. That is going to round this number. It's 5 or higher, so this is going to go up to 5. So again, 310.35 degrees is not there. If you had a rounding issue and you circled the wrong answer, I at least gave you 1 point. So if you didn't have the correct answer and you had some kind of supporting work, I gave you 1 point. You also may have gotten a point for the work with the correct answer, but maybe you didn't circle the problem correctly. So I was trying to at least give you some partial credit rather than normally on multiple choice I give you 2 or 0. That side was 2, 4, 6. Free response was 4, so that side was out of 10 points. Backside. Backside was the big word problem. In order to find the height of Rebel Alliance Mountain, Darth measures the angle of elevation to the summit to be 32 degrees. Summit means the top. She then moves 4.5 miles farther away and measures the angle of elevation to be 14.6 degrees. Rounding to the nearest whole mile, how tall is Rebel Alliance Mountain? So here's Darth. Looks up at the summit. That's 32 degrees. We don't know the height in which it is to, this is my mountain. And then Darth scoots back 4.5 miles, so we know that measure. So you're at 14, and then measures up to be 14.6 degrees. So I have 2 triangles. I have a small triangle. This one has 32 degrees, X and H. And then the big triangle has 14.6 degrees, H. And this side is X plus 4.5. The reason why you can't solve this triangle using trig, or you can't use Pythagorean theorem, is because you have 2 unknowns. Well, how do you solve 2 unknowns in math? You have to use systems of equations. So that matches the problem that you might be doing, the indirect problem measurement in your projects. To get an equation set equal to h, I have the opposite over the adjacent. So I have tangent of 32 equals the opposite over the adjacent. I want to get an equation set equal to h, so I cross multiply. I have h equals x times tan 32. On this side, we'll do the same thing. I want to get an equation set equal to h. So I have tangent of 14.6 is equal to the opposite over the adjacent, h over 4.5x. 4.5 plus x, and then when you cross multiply, you have this as your answer. Here, because I have 2 equations set equal to h, I can set them equal to each other. I'm using parentheses here. I'm going to distribute tangent of 14.6 to each of these terms. Here, you could evaluate, but I decided not to, meaning you could put that into your calculator. I'm trying to get the x's together, so if I subtract tangent of 14.6 times x to both sides, remember they're multiplication because they're kind of like glue, so they stick together. These cancel. And then here I'm going to factor out, or the greatest common factor is they both have an x. And then tangent of 32 minus tangent of 14.6, this is multiplication, so I'm going to divide it on both sides. This goes away, you're left with x equals, and then this is where I evaluated. Tangent of 14.6 times 4.5, I got approximately 1.17216. Even though you're rounding to the nearest whole, notice how I'm using lots of decimals. The common mistake here is to do 32 minus 14.6. That would be incorrect. You actually have to evaluate it separately. Tangent of 32 minus tangent of 14.6. You'll get these 2 answers, and when you divide it, you'll get x is approximately 3.2168. Well, you have to think about what x represents. X does not represent the height of Rebel Alliance Mountain. You scroll back up here. X represents this number here. Again, you're not finding this height, you're trying to find the height of the mountain. So how do you solve for h? You can pick one of these equations that you already solved for h. I picked the easiest one here. X is approximately 3.2168 times tangent of 32. Height is approximately 2.01, or height is approximately 2 miles. So to summarize how to do the problem, two triangles, set equal and solve for x, and then solve for h. I was very generous. I gave you 2 points out of 4, 50% correct, just drawing a correct picture. To get the third point, so there it is, 2 points for having the picture, or if you have both equations for height. To get the third point, you had to have solved for x, and of course to get full credit, you would have to have solved for h. That side was only worth 4 points, so 4 plus 10 gives you the 14 on this side. On Aries, what I did is I made it 2 individual assignments. I made one test 14 out of 44. And then one of them 30 out of 44. So then my math for that is, let's see, 0.68. And then this one, 14 divided by 44. I play around into 0.32. So what I did is then something like, instead of me adding it on your papers, it's just on Aries pretty accurately. So this test was only out of 14.